Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen stories. In our title story, a Karen freaks out after she gets caught speeding and then assaults me. In our second story, a dude's career literally gets destroyed because of road rage. Let's dive right into the video. So the first one starts like this. I live in a typical type of boring suburban neighborhood. This is the kind of place where nothing crazy or newsworthy tends to happen. Like, we have a local newspaper, but anything local in it is just fluff pieces. I consider a place like this ideal to raising a family because crime rates are low and I don't need to make millions of dollars to live in a nice place. There are problems though, and the one I'm gonna talk about today is called Karen. She lives next door to me and is the grumpiest person I've ever met in my life. She always has something to say, but trust me, it's never something nice. She is what I call a complainer, and if the block had a manager, she would be talking to him on a daily basis. I can understand complaining about things to a certain degree, but am I going to complain to my wife when work is hard? Yeah. Same with me when lines at the DMV are long or if you order a burger and end up with fish. Those are normal things to complain about, and I think if I met a person that never complained, I would be a little freaked out and think that they were aliens. Karen takes complaining to the next level though, where almost everything she has to say ends up being either a complaint or an insult. And she has mastered somehow combining the two, like when my wife decided to plant some nice flowers in our yard. They were a light pink color and nothing too drastic. Karen still complained so and said that they were a horrible color, but she didn't expect my wife to pick a good one. Another thing she loves to grip about to all the parents on the block is the fact that the kids play out in the street. This is not uncommon, and they are not blocking traffic or anything either. This is not a busy road, and when a car does end up coming, they make sure to clear the road of themselves and anything they are playing with. Not to mention, there are always parents keeping an eye, either from the yards or windows. I've had my son hear words I wish he hadn't due to Karen, who was not even driving, complaining that they were blocking the street and being a danger to everybody. Well, actually, they were not, and we have never seen an instance of property or a person getting hurt from playing. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I'm curious where you are from. Is it common that kids play on the street in the neighborhood? Interestingly enough, I've had neighbors here in Thailand, usually they are from North America, and they say that it's fairly uncommon for kids to play in the street because it's simply too dangerous because of the cars driving by. Which is interesting because where I'm from, a small town in Europe, it's pretty common. Anyway though, it's normal and she's acting like they're trying to block off a highway or something, and the last thing I want to mention that she complains about a lot is where I park my car. I don't always park in the driveway if I'm just running in and out or I know I'll be leaving again soon. It is just a thing of convenience, but whenever I park in front of my house, I would get an earful from Karen. She would tell me that I was blocking her property and being far too close. First of all, I'm in front of my own home, and second of all, she cannot own the street in front of her home. I just cannot block her driveway, and that's it. Now, despite it being a pretty nice neighborhood, we were having some problems of little minor things happening here and there, a broken window, a flat tire, a smashed potted plant, nothing extreme like weapons or theft, but enough to make us all worry a little bit. We assumed it was teenagers being angsty and wanting to rebel a little bit. I decided to be a little safe and get a dash cam for my car and some extra cameras so the rear of my car and the sides are covered too, just in case things got worse or more damage was being done. Well, this ended up coming in handy after a few days when something ended up happening with Karen. I was backing out of my driveway and was already mostly out and turned when Karen came by speeding down the street. I'm still kind of blocking the road, but luckily there was no accident, or at least no car crash, I should say. She slammed on her brakes and smashed into her horn even long after the cars were both stopped. She also gave me the finger before getting out of her car and walking over to mine. Clearly she was in the wrong due to the fact that the speed limit on these streets is like 20 miles per hour and she was driving around 50. That did not stop her from screaming at me. I got out of the car and stood in front of it. I wanted to make sure anything else would be on the dash cam at least. I had pulled out my phone to start recording her as well. Karen, what the hell were you doing? You could have killed me. Me, I was just backing out of my driveway. You came flying down the road. Karen, my speed does not matter. You were blocking the entire street with your car. Me, I was backing out. If you were going a reasonable distance, you would have seen it and avoided needing to brake so hard. Karen, I was only going 10 miles per hour. You were the one driving totally recklessly and being in the wrong lane. You should apologize and hope that I don't sue you for damages. I could have whiplash because of you. Me, if you have an injury, that's your own fault. Karen, you little witch! You don't know who I am or what kind of things I'm capable of. I can make you sorry that you even lived next door to me. Me, too late for that. Karen, you're very rude. Anybody would believe me over you anyway. Haven't you ever heard that the woman is always right? Me, I don't think that's the phrase. Also, I have the entire thing caught on my dashcam, and plus now on my phone you're threatening me. Karen, screw your dashcam. She turned towards my car before kicking it. I don't know how she learned for her leg to get that high or kick that strong, but she left a noticeable dent in the car. Then she started going crazy at the fact that I was recording her and tried to reach for my phone. I held it and tried to back away, but Karens can get determined. At the end of the entire thing, my car was dented, my phone had been smashed onto the street, and I was on the ground in pain because she decided to turn her kicking rampage onto me. I tell her that I'm gonna call the cops, and once again, she claims women are always right and walks away. I called the police and they came right over. I was able to show them the dashcam footage since she was not able to get a hold of that and destroy it. What she didn't know was that my phone backup was working and managed to get the video saved to the cloud before she could destroy it. I showed them both of the videos and they needed to go and have a talk with Karen. As for my body, I was not hurt enough to need to go to the hospital, but it would leave a nice bruise that I was told to take pictures of. As for the dent in the car, the police report being filed would be enough for my insurance to take care of. They went to Karen's house and arrested her on the spot for multiple charges. Speeding, destruction of property, assault and battery. She was not going with them quietly though, and instead was screaming I was lying and that I was the dangerous one that needed to be arrested. Also that I almost killed her and now she had whiplash because of me. Due to Karen's overblown ego, she was not able to just plead guilty and take the punishment. Instead, she wanted to go to court and fight it. Her entire side was claiming that she was hurt in the accident and did nothing wrong. She was just an innocent woman who was being attacked and taken control of by men. She even came wearing a neck brace thing to try and gain pity. The videos were used as my main source of evidence because all she had was word of mouth. And the fact that I was not saying the nicest things in the video either, but that was a long leap to jump for me being the bad guy. She even tried to argue that I blocked the street and that was the reason the entire thing was my fault. As for her being in a neck brace, the court wanted medical records, which she did not have. She never went to a hospital and claimed that her issues were self-diagnosed. She was also told to remove the neck brace and stop making things up. The judge told her that it was clear she had some anger management issues, especially when it came to cars. It was her road rage that escalated a situation that we both could have walked away from into a court case. It was true that if she had never gotten out of the car, I would not even have called the police on her at all, not just for going down the street too fast. The cops from the scene even testified that when they arrested Karen, she was not cooperative and throwing a fit. Part of me wishes that she fought them a little bit harder and ended up needing to get pepper sprayed or tased or something, but that might also be just some spite I have left over from the entire thing. In the end though, she got no sympathy or mercy from the courts, she was given a fine and her license got totally taken away until she was able to complete a program. I guess it was designed for angry drivers or something. She also was given the opportunity to do community service instead of her full jail sentence, so after she did end up getting out of jail, I heard she was cleaning up litter on the side of the roads, which I found ironic and was sure she would find some other angry drivers during that whole thing. For my car, the insurance company ended up suing Karen for the money on their end, where I did not even need to do anything. She paid and I was able to get my car fixed up as good as new. Now, I cannot say anything for sure, but I will say that as soon as Karen was arrested and went to jail, all the petty crimes stopped. Take that for whatever you want, but I think it is an interesting coincidence. Basically though, my neighborhood became peaceful again, and even when Karen came back, she decided to keep to herself from that point on. I have not heard anything out of her in months and hope that it will stay that way for as long as we are both living here. It was a bad situation that ended up having a happy ending, at least for me. And yeah guys, did you ever have a road rage jerk nearly run you off the road? Well, imagine showing up to a job interview and finding out that that same aggressive driver would be your new boss. Let's dive right into the next story, but before we do, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel because that would mean a lot to me. So this is a revenge story from my buddy, let's call him Iceman. Since this did not happen in the States, some terms might sound different. So Iceman had his master's in business from a top-tier university in our country. He worked corporate for several years before finding his sweet spot in digital marketing, mostly doing freelance work. Around 6 months ago, Iceman got contacted by a decent-sized company about a marketing manager position. He was not super excited about it, but freelancing was getting old and he thought having a regular 9 to 5 for a while might be nice, so he agreed to interview. The interview was scheduled for 9 AM, so he left at 8 since the office was clear across town. He was cruising at the speed limit on the highway when this jerk, we will call him Hotshot, came flying up behind him in a BMW, flashing his high beams like crazy. aka normal BMW behavior. And being rush hour, the next lane was packed and the car in front of Iceman was also going the speed limit, so Iceman just kept driving normally while Hotshot kept flashing and riding his bumper. This continued for a bit until traffic cleared up on the side. Iceman figured since he was doing the speed limit with cars ahead, he could stay put and Hotshot could pass in the slower lane if he wanted to speed. But Hotshot was not having it and started laying on the horn, which finally made Iceman move over. But Hotshot was not done, he got behind Iceman again, still flashing and honking. Getting worried about this behavior, Iceman slowed down and moved way over, hoping Hotshot would just leave. Instead though, Hotshot zoomed around him, cut in front and slammed his brakes. Iceman barely managed to stop in time. Hotshot jumped out, yelling all sorts of nonsense, kicking Iceman's car, hitting his window and making rude gestures, but Iceman stayed in his car the whole time, kept his shades on and avoided eye contact. He had his dashcam running and didn't want to seem like he was provoking anything if he needed to report this. Hotshot finally got back in his car, flipped one last bird and then sped off. Iceman made it to the interview barely past 9, still shaken up. After meeting HR and the outgoing marketing manager, he was scheduled to meet the regional sales director, his future boss. You can guess where this is going. The regional sales director was none other than Hotshot himself. Surprisingly, Hotshot did not recognize Iceman and Iceman was blown away by how professional Hotshot was acting. The interview was brief with Iceman barely keeping it together and he headed home after 15 minutes. HR said they would be in touch. Well, the next few days, Iceman kept thinking about how he should have said something. He imagined all these scenarios where he could have stood up to Hotshot, but it was too late. Then HR called, he made it to the final round with the county director. That is when Iceman's plan came together. He remembered the dashcam footage, he pulled the clip showing Hotshot brake checking him, getting out, kicking his car and making gestures though there was not any sound. Iceman brought his tablet with the video to the interview. He sat down with the country director, HR manager and Hotshot, and when the country director asked why he wanted to work there, Iceman took a deep breath and said he didn't, not with employees like Hotshot. The room went dead silent and Iceman then showed them the video on his tablet. When the country director asked what was going on, Iceman pointed out the raging guy was sitting right there. Hotshot muttered "ducking loser" and walked out. The director looked at HR, who said, "I think we are done here. You've made your point." "Well, not exactly," said Iceman. "Something needs to be done about this guy." "We will look into it. Let me show you out," said the HR manager. They never asked for the video. Iceman went home feeling unsatisfied and called HR the next day to ask what they had done about Hotshot. He got the typical "we are reviewing the situation and will take appropriate action if needed" response. Well, that was not enough for Iceman and his industry friends told him nothing would happen to Hotshot as long as he kept bringing in money. So Iceman decided to go all out. He posted the video everywhere, social media, job boards, LinkedIn. He used different accounts to comment on the company's job post with the video. He reached out to his alumni network, all well-connected business grads, to show them the video and warn them about who they would be working under. Well, he kept this up for months and from what we know, they couldn't fill that position with anyone decent. Whenever someone from their alumni network got an interview offer, Iceman would contact them personally, share Hotshot's video, explain why they shouldn't work there, and help them find similar jobs at competitor companies. Hotshot became pretty infamous in the industry. The company's marketing took a nosedive, their website rankings dropped, their content became garbage and irregular, and they stopped running social media campaigns. Iceman figures he cost them around 5 to 10k in SEO and online presence. And that's not counting the lost business opportunities from inbound marketing, which could easily be over $500,000. Also, last we heard, Hotshot ended up getting fired due to ruining the reputation of the company, and of course, screw road raging idiots. And the next one is a revenge story. I spent about 2 decades working in security. During that time I worked many different types of security in many different locations. The one that matters for this story was time spent in the rental housing tribunal in a major city as a kind of bailiff. For those not knowing what that is, think a courtroom, in a major city anyway. In a smaller town it'll probably be an event room in a hotel or community center, as you would see on TV, but with less formality and an adjudicator instead of a judge. They functionally are the same thing to landlords and tenants, but they definitely are not the same thing. This place exclusively deals with landlords and tenant disputes and is the only place to resolve landlord and tenant disputes. Note that I was not a bailiff and it was not a court, but these terms mostly accurately describe the situation and my place in it. For 2 years I worked at the rental housing tribunal. It was early in my time in security and I was 18 to 20 years old. Being as it was a major city, the sheer number of cases I sat through was beyond my ability to count. I saw everything there was to see. No one is capable of surprising me with a story, because I've seen them all. In detail, as a side duty of mine was to ensure all parties had copies of all evidence being presented. I did a lot of photocopying and always read and inspected everything I copied to ensure nothing got cut off or made illegible. By the time I stopped working there, I probably knew the way everything worked well enough to be an adjudicator myself. Well, no, obviously not, but I'm certainly in no need of a lawyer either, should I ever have the need to go there. I also had intimate knowledge of how the system worked beyond the actual rules, like, for example, adjudicators would always give a little leeway to anyone representing themselves over someone who had a lawyer. Or how pissed off adjudicators would get when a party was speaking out of turn. Seriously, don't do that. Anyway, skip forward almost a decade. I left the city and I am in a fairly large town in the same province, same tenant laws. I have a few roommates in a decently sized townhouse. We get along well, but there's a problem. Only I can write checks and our paydays don't line up, so I'm the one who pays the rent and I usually cannot do it on the first because roommates don't usually all pay in time. We advised the landlord that we might be a day or two late, but we will always have it by the 3rd at the latest. They have no problem with it at all. I spoke to them myself for about a year. This works fine. No complaints from landlord, because even if we are often a day or two late, we always pay. We are also fairly quiet and don't damage the property, nearly model tenants. I don't actually have any idea why, but one day this changed. I suspect a different person in the company started overseeing the region. One day, suddenly we got a summons to the rental housing tribunal, hereafter to be referred to as RHT. On the 2nd of the month for failure to pay rent. This doesn't actually lead to a case because we paid the same day, but now we have to pay the application fee the landlord paid in order to serve the summons. I complained to the neighbor who was also the superintendent and eventually heard back that their contact at the company was now demanding the 1st of the month, no exceptions. Well, that really didn't work for us, so we probably had to pay that fee 15 to 20 times over the next 2 years. I could have gone to tribunal over it, but we were technically without a leg to stand on, and I knew it. Maybe if I went enough times I can ding them for harassment, but I don't have time for that and my roommates don't care. After being split between us, all the fee was not enough deterrent to change our behavior, so we accepted it. If this was the only issue, there would not be much story though. At around the same time the rent leeway vanished, so did mandatory maintenance. I'm not gonna list everything that went wrong and was not fixed. You will get a decent idea at the end. We suffered through it though. We were all working too many hours at crap pay to be able to actually do anything about it, and we adapted. However, after about 2 years it broke. Everyone but me up and moved out for various reasons within a 4-month period. I'm not gonna go into details on my roommates at all, because things kind of exploded for a couple different reasons outside of this. No reason to dig any of that up. Either way, I'd been saving up a while and was able to quit my job without having to immediately get another one, so I suddenly had a lot of time. I didn't want to stay and pay the rent by myself or have to find new roommates I could live with, and with my experience in the RHT I knew I had the landlord by the balls. So I went for them. I stopped paying rent and annoyingly I didn't get a summons the first month, but I did the second, so I went. With a meticulously documented plethora of evidence of failure to maintain the property and entering the property without formal notice. I had a copy for the landlord and a copy for the adjudicator. I know from experience that technically you are supposed to give the other party the evidence before the tribunal, but I also knew about that leeway an adjudicator gives to those who represent themselves. So I didn't give the landlord the evidence until our case came up, 100% total ambush. They argued that they were ambushed, but the adjudicator just dismissed the case, dressed me down a little, and told me to file my own summons as I should have done. This was the petty revenge. The landlord and lawyer drove 3 hours to get there for nothing. Worse than nothing though, I filed my own summons and the big day shows up. By now, it's been about 4 months of me not paying rent at this point. I'm prepared to if I lose, but I don't think I'm gonna lose. The whole thing could not have gone better. I had 20 to 30 pages of evidence and 20 odd photographs, and they had nothing. They had no actual defense for our water heater being out for 6 months or us not having a fridge for a year, just to mention 2 severe issues. Their entire defense rested on us being late for rent, which actually worked against them once that led to the adjudicator learning how many times we had paid the application fee, and lies that had no evidence to support them. They even talked over me a few times, and I saw in his eyes the one time I opened my mouth to protest during their turn to speak, but forced myself to shut up with every gram of willpower I had, so only a squeak came out. The adjudicator respected me. Though he had no respect for the landlord. I had won on every possible front, the only question was how much. It was more than I'd ever seen. I got 9 months of free rent and the landlord was ordered to have everything fixed before the next month was over, or I would get more. I gave notice that I was leaving at the end of the 8th month and left at the end of the 9th. Because the landlord had never renewed the lease, I didn't have to give him the 3-month notice the lease specified. If you want to figure out to put to it, I basically got a $13,000 judgment in my favor, adjusted for inflation and rounded. I also made the landlord and lawyer drive 3 hours twice only to lose. The landlord's face was so red at the end, I thought he would have a heart attack. He didn't though. By John. Added to clarify a few things based on questions, I also want to add for those good landlords out there, I do feel you. My time in the RHT was eye-opening. For every bad landlord, there are 10 bad tenants easily. There's a massive debate of debates to have over the whole thing. I'll only say that I do sympathize with the good landlords out there. I'm not trying to paint all landlords as terrible. This is the only landlord I've ever had that was so useless. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have ever had any experience with terrible landlords, then please feel free to let us know in the comments, because I would love to hear your story. And to end things, we will read one last funny, satisfying petty revenge story that is titled Beep Your Horn at Me, Welcome to Aggravation Town. So I walked out of my bank's building into a cramped parking lot that is always full. Getting a spot in it is just luck. As I opened the door to my car, I saw a guy in a truck pull in the north entrance. I was parked just about midline between the north and south entrances, and I had a few things to take care of before I intended to leave. Well, I no sooner started my car when I heard honk. In my peripheral vision, I see the truck that pulled in sitting stationary about 5 feet before my parking spot. I ignore. Honk, honk. Okay, here we go. I thought to myself, I never budged. After the third set of honks in under a minute, I decided I was digging in, and just as I was about to get stubborn, I see a little Toyota pull in the south entrance and turn down my lane. I immediately reversed out and squeezed on an angle between the truck's front end and the other parking spaces opposite of me. This gave the truck nowhere to go. I waved the old gal into my parking spot and she had to come in on an angle, so it took her a couple attempts to straighten out her car in my old spot. All the while, Mr. in the truck was losing his mind. The elder lady got out of her car and started to walk across in front of me towards the bank. I could hear the truck driver yelling over the honks. She approached my window, thanked me, and made the comment about the anger issue guy. I laughed and told her to have a nice day. As she straightened up from leaning into my window, I see the arthritic hand raise the middle finger as she shoved her fist into the air in the general direction of Mr. Honky Truck. And yeah guys, if you enjoyed the stories, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments. I will see you again tomorrow.